Hello, hello, hello. Good day to all. I'm hoping you have a wonderful time, and I'm hoping you'll have a great day ahead. I'm Steven Laranjo, and Steven Emmer Laranjo, that is, and I am a forester, and majority of my work endeavors have been revolve around research. So I primarily work with uh, natural environment sector on watersheds, coastal resources. Now I'm working on a project about flood resilience, about community flood resilience. And I've never really been into research until I got into college and I started working. So, I know that a lot of you have different problems and concerns and things you want to understand better about research. And that's why I'm here today. Welcome to the show. um, let's start off with the concept of research. What is research? So, by definition, research is just finding answers about things you are curious about. Curiosity is the main element about this. And I know that a lot of research projects, whether in school or at work, are driven by the simple fact that it's a requirement. It's something that we have to do. It's something that our teacher told us to do, so we have to submit it by this date or whatever. It's it's part of the project proposal that my boss sent me, and we just have to do it. We just have to execute it. But without curiosity, without any element of curiosity, you won't be conducting research well. Why? Because you're not curious about the answers. You're not curious about the topics itself. You the thing is, you just want to find out more. You want to find out more about certain things. Whether it's uh a main one of the main I would say misconceptions about research is that you have to know things about the unknown. Yeah, you have to explore the unknown. You have to invent something. You have to invent a machine that turns wastewater into drinking water, or you have to turn the pulp of the leaves of a certain plant into a perfume of some sort. But no, no, no. Research is not always about the unknown. It's not always about figuring out what you can't understand, what you don't know yet. But research is also about curiosity about the current knowledge. Even the most commonsensical things to your mind must still be questioned. And with that kind of mindset, good research at that, is very possible. There's a reason why tons of research about a topic, say for example, mental health, has been going on for years and has evolved, and that's not because it's driven by changing times. Well, that could be a factor, of course, it could be driven by now we have access to more information. Now we have tools to get the information better. There are a lot of different factors that contribute to this. Traffic. Traffic in the metro has been studied for years and years and years. And fortunately, in the Philippines, we still haven't found the answer or the workaround traffic. So, if we think it's commonsensical, then maybe we should research about it. Of course, it's the same with the things that we don't know, right? Like, is life possible on Mars? What conditions could the planet be in that would make it livable to human race? Or what conditions can the human being be or endure in themselves to be able to live in Mars, right? So those are the things that makes research interesting and fun. Hopefully, supposedly. So, is it research when I am, for example, looking into different types of climate change, effects of climate change to human beings? Is it research if I search it on the internet and I look for a website or a blog or Wikipedia, everyone's favorite website for homeworks since what, 2000 something? Is that research? The answer is no. Why? Because an important thing in research is also the reliability of the source or of the data that you collected. Am I saying Wikipedia is not reliable? Wikipedia is kind of in this limbo where it's reliable, really, because they also gather the data from sources, but it's not formally a source or a good source for information, because it's a summary, or it's what I'm saying is it's just at the surface of whatever topic you might be searching. So it's research if you look for journal articles that have been published by researchers as well, in their researches. It's a credible source because it has been peer reviewed by experts. It has also undergone several trials or several replications, such that the research or the results of the research are valid. Is there this kind of elitism when we're talking about research? No, no, no. The only reason why journal articles are the considered most valid, shall we say, example of research materials is because journal articles, again, have been tested, have been replicated, have been peer reviewed to a certain number of times that what we can say is that the results of that study for that certain matter in that certain location is true. In terms of secondary data, at least, you know. Also, if you're talking about primary data, right? So if it's primary data, it's straight from the source. If it's secondary data, it's through an avenue, you know. If it's primary data, there is a specific number of statistically significant number of interviews that you should be getting in order to get a valid and sound data to be analyzed. So I hope we set the table and are clear about that. Now, here's the thing. I asked, we collected your questions because that's what we're here for today. We'll try to answer some of your research questions. Research questions because you're doing tons of research. I know. I've been there in school, wondering when I'm gonna finish these research projects, and it's a big task. So, all right. Number one, we have to clarify what are the steps involved in the research process. Okay. So, curiosity is the main ingredient towards good research, as I've mentioned. Which means that we start by identifying a problem, a research problem, or a research question for that matter. And then, in this research problem, we have to understand that that simple statement is the root of everything. It's the root of what we're going to do. It's the root of, or it's a source of what will be the major components of our research paper. And I'm sure, in your classes you've discussed about the research process, right? Since you're working on research. But this is a very important part, the research process. It's developing a problem. But, reality is that sometimes it comes last. Sorry. Sometimes it comes last that because of course it's driven by we have to do something. Sometimes what happens is, even in undergraduate thesis in college, that we identified the problem last, but we've already developed our methodologies. We've already developed we've already have the review of related literature and all that stuff. But the main point is that you have to understand what you're trying to figure out. Because at the end of the day, that's what drives your research. That's the direction of your research. So, take seriously your setting up your problem, your research problem. And of course, if you have a research problem, you now get your hypothesis. And once you have your hypothesis, you can now develop your and I'm not saying this step by step. I'm just helping you understand the mindset when it comes to conducting research. So if you have your supposed answers or educated guess to your research question, um, you develop methods on how to get it. You develop methods of secondary data, gathering primary data, if possible, scheduling it. Is it feasible? Things like that. That's the major concern about methodologies. People just, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. Like, I'm going to study about the effects of gaming to young people. What are the effects of gaming to young people? And I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna interview 1,500, students, and I'm gonna uh, do apply this theory, whatever, to analyze uh, their answers. While that's a very noble and very scientific way to do it, you also have to consider a lot of things. Number one, time. You have to consider your time. You have to consider your resources. You have to consider your capacities. I mean, can you do it at your level? And again, not to be elitist, but it's a matter of understanding what you have and what you don't have. How much time do you have left with how much resources you have already at your disposal? So it's just like regular programming. Now, once you've gotten your data collection per se, we can proceed, of course, with analyzing the data. It's the same thing with data collection. Analyzing the data can be tricky because there's always a statistical aspect to it. Here's a misconception. My study is a qualitative study. It just focuses on the perceptions and the attitudes of people towards say, for example, national parks in the country. What are I'm just trying to figure out what how they view national parks. Do they care at all? Do they want to go there? How much are they willing to pay for it? Things like that, that questionnaire. So my study is qualitative, so I don't need statistical analysis for it. No, definitely not. While you don't need statistical methods in the process itself, you need statistical analysis for your data. How would you say it's valid? How would you say it's sound? Right? Because whatever opinions people have are actually valid. I don't wanna visit that park, Or let's change the topic. The attitudes and perceptions of people or young people towards games. Okay. For example, you're curious about that. So what are your methods? Your methods are sending out surveys to people for primary data. If you want, you can have key informants. Okay? And then you can get secondary data online So if you're from the Philippines, it's always usually the secondary data should also come from the Philippines or somewhere close by. Uh, like for example, in the context of Asia, things like that. Um, and then you you want you've gathered the data. You gather the data, and then you identify that it's a qualitative study. Okay, it's a qualitative study. Fine. Now you begin to analyze. How do you say so how do you say that RTS is better than FPS, or that MOBA is better than FPS, or FPS is better than MOBA? You just go yes, yes, Oh, because RTS is real time strategy in the name, and it's very strategic, and I have fun with strategies. Okay, it's valid. Because MOBA requires good teamwork. FPS because it touches on reactions of people, reaction times of people. How fast are they? Okay, that's valid also. So how can you say that those are significant data or valid data, to say the least, when you're just processing it by thinking if it's valid? That's why people get the measures of central tendency. What is the mean? Okay? Is the mean representative? Like mean age, mean number of hours playing, mean number of games played, uh, mean number of males playing this type of game, mean number of females playing this type of game, mean number of LGBTQIA plus community playing this certain game. Is the mean representative for your sample size? When I say representative, is there an extremely high number or an extremely low number? Are there tons of them? What we call as outliers, right? So if the mean is not representative because the answers are not close to each other, then you find the standard deviation, the variance. And if it still doesn't work, you go to your other statistical, methods. If it's still not significant, that's where correlation analysis is involved. That's where your ANOVA, if you're familiar with ANOVA, is involved. So that's usually the steps taken if you're concerned about the statistical nature of your study. And then, of course, you can do your qualitative understanding of the study, analysis of the study as well, after your statistical analysis. And then, of course, you draw out conclusions and recommendations. So that's the basic steps, so to speak, of setting up your research. Now, formulating a research topic and writing a research title. Given the example again a while ago, I am curious about, so my research question is about the attitudes and perceptions of young people towards games. That's well and good. But number one, you have to delimit it. You have to delimit it uh, for the sake of your sanity. No, but you have to delimit it for the sake of of you can't really study everything in one research project. So you have to specify your method, specify your area of concern. So if it's games, what kind of games? If it's if you're talking about young people, who? What kind of young people? Are they students? Are they out of school youth? Are they professional gamers? Or are they all? It can be like that. But you have to make sure that you delimit your topic. So say for example, given that research question, we can derive a title such as the perceptions and behaviors of teenagers towards video games. So you've delimited what you're going to do, perceptions and behaviors. You've delimited for whom it is, teenagers, and you've delimited what the subject is, video games. Now, the rest of the information can be you can identify the rest of the details in your methodology. You can say, for example, that you can further subdivide the teenagers into, as I mentioned a while ago, students, out of school youth, pro gamers, whatever, in whichever way you seem fit. You can subdivide video games into what? Mobile games, PC games. The term is console games, but PC is also console, mobile is also console, but what do you call that? In your Xboxes or PlayStations. So yun, console games. And then you can further subdivide that into genre, right? You can also subdivide it into what I mentioned a while ago. Is it RTS? Is it FPS? Is it MOBA? So there. And the most important thing is that with the title that you have selected or identified, you can derive objectives from it already. That's the important thing about writing the research title. Plus, a lot of researches I've read, for example, has that title, and then has a recommendation of, or has a conclusion or recommendation of, video games have adverse effects to human brain. Is that part of your research? That's not part of the research, because the research that the hypothetical research we're talking about is the perceptions and behaviors of youth towards video games. Since you've delimited your topic, you stick to that. Because again, we can't study everything. Research is a very tedious process. Alright. Searching for appropriate and related sources to the research topic and understanding and analyzing its content. What is a good source? We've kind of touched on this a while ago. So, here's a tip. Here's what I usually do. For every topic that's given to me, for example, the teacher or the professor tells me to look into. Alright, let's keep the video game example. Look into video games, right? So what I'll do is, I'll search the particular thing they're looking for in video games. Say for example, if they just want a comparative analysis of, which is basically just comparing PC games versus mobile games versus console games. So I'll key in that the comparative analysis of video games, PDF, PDF, which of course, as you all know, stands for a PDF, a file. The file type PDF. Why PDF? Because usually journal articles are in PDF format. So if you key that in, then all the results will be having PDF files, downloadable PDF files, which may or may not contain journal articles. Or at times, I'll key in journal articles for that matter. So I highly encourage you to do the same. That way, you'll practice getting data from sources that are published, peer-reviewed, replicated studies, rather than just keying in the topic and then looking for some blog or news article about it. If it's, I would say, if it's a report, you're just looking for a summary, that's fine. But if you're making or your task to do research, journal articles is the way to go. Books, while it's a good option, we can't really get books now physically, right? Because our mobility is limited by the pandemic. So there's that. There are also ebooks that you can download. And another thing that you can practice, guys, is if you get the journal article or you get the book, you look into the bibliography of it already and you'll copy paste it in your Word files or Google Docs so that you won't have a hard time in the end. Where is that source? I need it for my bibliography or references. Well, if you've already downloaded it and copy pasted it in your Word files, then you'll have an easier time. Treating and analyzing collected data using statistics. Alright. Here's a part I've touched into a while ago. For everything, for every study, the first step towards statistical analysis is measures of central tendencies. What are the measures of central tendencies? As I've mentioned a while ago, mean, standard deviation, and variance. Those three are the most important. Because they will tell you that if the data you collected is a good data statistically if there are no outliers, which means they're kind of consistent. And maybe you'll say, "Oh, so consistency is the one of the major keys. So I'll just manipulate my data into something that's consistent." That's a big no-no. Keep your data integrity. Yeah, after that, we after figuring out if it's a good and valid data from doing your measures of central tendency, you can now proceed with whatever is necessary for your research topic. If you're comparing two variables, like in our example a while ago, perceptions to games, behaviors to games, you can go correlation analysis. Is there a relation between the perceptions of people towards games and games itself, or the types of games or genres of games? If that's fine, then you're good to go. That's one valid statistical measure for your level, at least at the senior high level, because in the undergraduate thesis you'll be required for more, but in most cases that would suffice. And the other statistical methods that you can apply are just to double check or cross reference if what the correlation analysis says is actually true. Do you immediately go ANOVA, one-way ANOVA, two-way ANOVA, three-way ANOVA? I know it's cool names and all that stuff, and it's hard, and it's nice to say that, I know this, but look at it if it's applicable. So in our study, is it applicable? Probably, but looking into its nuances, I think it's not, because you only do ANOVA if you have more than two variables to compare, which are totally unrelated. So if you find unrelated variables from your correlation analysis, you can take that and put that into your ANOVA if you still need it for your study. So main takeaway from that is find out what's the best statistical analysis method for your study, and do it, and try to look for another method that can cross-reference that. How do I know what statistical analysis is good? Unfortunately, there is no human encyclopedia or no book that says it all, because even with correlation analysis, like for example with biodiversity, we use the Pearsons. So there's an appropriate analysis for a certain study, and you can do that. You can figure that out by searching online. We have the internet. We are in the age of information. We can figure things out through the use of the internet. In reality also, you don't do it manually. You don't do statistics manually. There are tons of great software that are you can use. There's a free one called R. It's very powerful. There's also SPSS. There's also Stata and all other softwares. So if you're that kind of person that loves digging into softwares, try it. No, every one of you should try it because it makes your life easier. With just one click, you get the analysis. All you have to do is understand it. All right. Writing the contents of the research paper technically. Here's a fact. One of the things that I see people try to do is to try their writing in research exciting. You put deep, highfalutin English words which are not necessary. You try to not write the same sentence as you've or use the same words that you've used earlier. That's not really necessary. Here's the thing. Research paper writing, the writing is boring. You wanna know why? Because it's designed to be repetitive. It's designed to be repetitive to keep reiterating in the author's mind and in the reader's mind that this is what we did and this is going to be the result. So you don't have to, you can spare yourself from all the fancy stuff and stick with, just simple sentences. Stick with simple sentences. Involve your concepts. Involve your data methodologies in it. That's the most important thing. Again, it's designed to be boring. It's designed to be repetitive because it wants you to understand through repetition. That's a clue. You don't have to put all those deep words and fancy words. Presenting the research in front of a panel. The universally boring answer to this question is just know your study. But there are a lot of jitters that goes on and not everyone is the same. Not everyone is confident to speak in front of the people. I am comfortable speaking in front of people. I find it weird that I'm staring through a computer. But there's a different there are different characters for each one. But here's the thing. Silo mentality is a no-no. If it's a group presentation, silo mentality is a no-no. Don't say that if this is my part, this is the only thing I have to know. Understand all the contents of your paper so that you can have a nice flow, presentation from your group. And here's the thing. Always provide a selling point. Why should people care about your research? Why should people care about games? Why should people care about games? Why should the panel care about games? And I know that you presented it and written this, but it's still important to give your selling point, your pitch. Why would you listen? Why would they listen to your work? The pitch is usually just 2 minutes or way less. And that's the time where you can be creative. So, in my opinion, the only times you can be very creative with research work is methodology, because you can um, adapt to the situation and in presenting your data. I also suggest that if you present your data, or your study rather, to the panelist, refrain adding texts. So much text. I actually refrain adding texts to the presentation. I just add the figures. Why? Because the panelist wouldn't look at the presentation per se, but will listen to what you have to say. The challenge is you have to pour in the content. What is better? Do I need to have a script? Do I need to memorize the script? Can I read from the script? No, you can't read from the script. So it's either memorize it or you ad lib. Now, do what works for you. It's always, people always look for the best advice, but the best advice is in yourself. What are you good at? What are your strengths? What are you capable of doing? What are you not capable of doing? I am not capable of memorizing 2 pages worth of script. And I have no energy to memorize even 1 paper worth of script. So what I'll do is I'll skim through the whole thing and identify what I can do. How can I demonstrate it better? But if you're a person that likes to memorize it, you can memorize it, of course. But do ensure that it doesn't feel like you're running through the entire thing. Make it conversational. Don't make it like obvious that you've memorized the script. Make it very conversational and very casual. And last is practicing good work and ethics in conducting research. Stay true to your research. How do you stay true to your research? Look at your objectives always. Is what you're doing contributing towards achieving the objectives that you've written in the paper? Because usually, objectives is kind of left out. But the thing is, it's the one of the most important things. Because any panelist would look at the objectives always. Any good panelist would look at the objectives while looking at your paper. If they're reading the methodologies, they'll also look back at the objectives. If they'll view your results, they'll look back on your objectives. If they'll view your conclusion, they'll look back at your objectives and figure out if you really fulfilled your objectives. So stay true to that. Whatever you do is based on objectives. Second is data integrity. If you're doing surveys for methodology and you think the answer of the individual isn't right, you have no right to correct that answer because that's the data you've collected. What you can do is facilitate an answer from them. Facilitate a more robust answer from them rather than editing it afterwards. Never take data gathering as a joke. Whatever field you may be in, don't invent data. So, um that's it for me today. I think I'll be answering some questions if you have questions. It's hard to cover everything in a span of time. I like to discuss more, so if you have questions, I'm happily going to answer them. And I hope nothing but the best for your student lives and your research lives. And I hope some of you get into the research field because the country needs lots of researchers. So, thank you very much for listening, and I hope you will have a great day. I hope I answered some of your questions. Enjoy your day.